Effective 4 p.m. today, we're telling Nova Scotians, stay out of the woods. We are restricting travel and activities that really aren't necessary for most of us. Hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles in the woods are not permitted. Trail systems through woods are off limits. Camping is allowed, but only in official campgrounds. The fine for violating any of these bans is the same as the fine for the ban on burning, $25,000. And if you're a smoker, for God's sakes, be mindful of where you're butting your butt out. If you don't, and you cause a fire, we will hold you accountable. So what does this mean if you have a home or cottage surrounded by a wooded area? We strongly encourage you to stay out of those woods, regardless of where they are. Please don't do anything that could unnecessarily put you, your family, or your neighbors at risk. This situation sucks. Summer is one of the best times in Nova Scotia, and we all look forward to getting outdoors and enjoying our scenic beauty that surrounds us. I get that, and I'm right there with you as Nova Scotians. But you can still go to the beach. In fact, that's a great place to be on these hot, dry days. Just no bonfires. If there's a short trail to get from point A to point B, like from the parking to the beach or to the lake to fish, that's fine. But that's it. No heading into the woods to spend time there. I know it's inconvenient. I know it's the height of summer vacation and people want to do all the activities that we so much enjoy in our great outdoors. We have a beautiful province. I know everybody wants to enjoy it, but we have to stay out of the woods. It's a small price to pay right now to avoid the kind of devastation that we saw from the wildfires in 2023. Nobody wants to go back there.
That's the disgraceful Premier of Nova Scotia, who is introducing climate lockdowns. That's what those are. He's not allowing people to go into the forest as if your mere presence will cause some combustion. No hiking, he says. He says no camping, but then later he says camping is okay. He says the whole thing sucks. That's how articulate and convincing he is. There's no science, of course, behind this, just like there was no science behind the COVID lockdowns. The 6 feet of separation, we later learned from the former head of the FDA, was a number that just appeared. No one knows where it came from, but everyone repeated it. No science, just like the vaccines were not actual vaccines. They didn't actually stop you from getting the illness. And here we have another form of quasi-science, but again, it's your civil liberties that are vaporized. It really is amazing. I was taking notes, and he said no camping, but then he said you could go camping. I'm not sure which it is. And then he said, if you own private property, please don't go into your own woods. I suppose we'll have to check the fine print if there even is any. And by the way, do you think police understand the law? Do you think police will be able to use their judgment appropriately for what sucks and has to be arrested and fined and what sucks and doesn't? I understand having a fine on fires in the woods. I understand prohibiting that. I don't need a scientist to show me the connection between lighting a fire and a forest catching on fire. But, I sort of do need a scientist to show me the link between fishing and a fire or hiking and a fire. Just complete junk science, someone flexing his power because he can. No reasonableness, no exemptions, no exceptions, clearly illegal. I'd like to see his authority for doing this, especially on private property. What a total disgrace. This premier, of course, being one of two, along with Ontario's Conservative premier, who thought they would weigh in during the federal election against Pierre Poilievre. He is a Conservative in name only, and I'm disgusted by what he said. But is there something that can be done about it? We learned from the COVID lockdowns that you can sometimes win in court. You'll remember when the Emergencies Act was invoked, there was a group of organizations and individuals that challenged the legality of it. And wouldn't you know it, Justice Mosley of the Federal Court of Canada said, in fact, the whole invocation of the Emergencies Act was illegal. And the way it was enacted was illegal. He took particular objection to the way they seized bank accounts without any care, without any attempt to minimize the infraction and infringement on our civil liberties. And that seems like what's going on here. There's no attempts to be reasonable, no attempts to limit the infringements. It's just a thuggish premier who thinks he can do what he wants. Joining us now to talk about it is a lawyer whose organization was one of those that went to court to get the Emergencies Act knocked down and was successful. I'm talking about Marty Moore, a lawyer who works with the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. Marty, great to see you again.
Good to see you, Ezra.
Oh boy, watching that guy, I had all sorts of sick flashbacks to the lockdowns. Here in Ontario, the buffoonish premier briefly said no one's allowed to go out at all. And it was only when the police union said, yeah, we're not going to enforce that law, did Doug Ford back down. But his thuggish instincts were to ban everyone from the streets. That's how this feels to me. What does it look like to you from a legal point of view?
Absolutely. And that stay-at-home order in Ontario was deemed unconstitutional in its reach recently by the Ontario Court of Appeal in a case that we had. And, you know, Ezra, your analogy here to COVID and the COVID power grab is spot on in my view. This is a climate change power grab, and expressly so. The law under which this order is being enacted states that this is in part for the protection of the forest in a changing climate. And so climate change is the basis for this power grab. We saw COVID being the basis for actually a very similar power grab in Alberta back in 2020 when they prohibited people from going hiking in the mountains as well. Just as much science to support that particular claim. The legal basis of this is shocking, it's unreasonable, and the constitutional limitations are there as well, Ezra.
Yeah. We have a video from a Nova Scotian who is a bit of a political objector. I sense he was the same way during the lockdowns. You know, the provincial government has actually used yellow police tape as if the woods are a crime zone. I want to tell you, Marty, during the lockdowns, when they use yellow tape to shut down playgrounds probably the healthiest, safest place in the whole country. You're outdoors, you're getting exercise. They just wanted people inside watching their phones and TVs. I went outside with one of my kids, and we would go to a neighborhood playground, and we would spend 10 minutes taking down all the yellow caution tape from the entire playground, putting in the garbage. And then we would play on the playground, and we would wait to see how long it took some passing kid to stop and come and play on the playground again. And we did this every weekend, and it was actually my favorite activity, and I called it sort of the Playground Liberation Army. And of course, the police would come and tape it down again, and then I would go out with the little one, and we would take the tape down. And it takes a little bit of courage to do something like that, but if enough people are sort of passively resisting, or I suppose that's actively resisting, then you get a win. If the entire province of Nova Scotia goes into full-on obedience mode, if people say, oh my God, we need a climate lockdown because walking causes fires. Hey guys, did you know that biking causes fires? Hey, did you know that fishing causes fires? You know, we all have to pitch in and do our part. If everyone is compliant and obedient, then all is lost. But all it would take is 50 or 100 Nova Scotians to take down that damn fool yellow tape. And what is the province going to do? Have a province-wide manhunt? Anyways, I'm just hoping that Nova Scotians are not as obedient as their premier thinks they are. What do you think?
Well, I can say that given Tim Houston's comments and those very similar lines about health and safety and how it's important for you not to enter your own woods to protect you and your family's health and safety, that would be the exact same logic that would have seen you fined for $25,000, Ezra, for tearing down those yellow barriers around the playgrounds in the neighborhood. This kind of logic is anti-logic. It is double speak. It is completely illogical with no basis in fact at all. And again, you're right that it is dependent on the population for enforcement. In Nova Scotia, you can see that they've already set up a snitch line. They're relying on people to turn in their neighbors to pursue a goal completely without logic. This goal of protecting your neighbors, you're protecting your health by not walking through the forest. Yeah, show me the link that walking through the forest causes forest fires, and maybe you have a way to defend your law. But right now, this law, which is premised on it being necessary to protect the forest, that is the legal standard. It's necessary to protect the forest. How is it necessary to protect the forest? By keeping you from walking through your own woods or inviting other people over to your own woods. And to get into the order itself, Ezra, it is incredibly broad. It applies to private property just as much as public property. And it would apply to you walking through your own woods just as much as it would apply to your neighbor coming over and walking through your woods with you. The scope of this law is broad, and them trying to say it's less than that or double speak and say, well, maybe we'll let you go here. Well, that's not the way the law is supposed to work. They are instilling a climate of fear. You could see it through that interview, and we know that fear is their weapon in these situations. They don't use logic. They don't use reason. They just use fear. And that $25,000 fear of a fine is exactly what they're counting on to keep the population of Nova Scotia compliant with this climate power grab.
Yeah. And it's there's a section of our Constitution that bans things that are, quote, cruel and unusual treatment or cruel and unusual punishment. A $25,000 fine for walking within your own forest is clearly unusual and quite cruel. This is a lawless premier. It's a disgrace that Tim Houston calls himself a conservative. There is a man, I don't know him at all, Jeff Evely is his name. I understand he has been a political activist before, including running as a People's Party candidate. As you may know, the People's Party was certainly the most noisy in opposition to the climate lockdowns. In fact, it was the only party that opposed, the pandemic lockdowns. I think I just said climate lockdowns. I'd like to play a short clip of Jeff Evely, who seems to be out in the woods near some of this yellow police tape. Let's take a look now.
Hey everybody, Jeff Evely here. I'm in Petersfield Provincial Park in the most tyrannical province of Canada, which is Nova Scotia, with my fuzzy friend Axel, where we walk pretty much every single morning. And here you can see that this area is taped off because that trail is the woods. But this area is not taped off because that's not the woods. This area is taped off because that's the woods, and there is a sign here that says trail closed due to extreme fire hazard. So that is the woods. This area is not the woods. This area is the woods. This area is not the woods. This area is the woods. This area is not the woods. This area is the woods. This area is not the woods. This area is the woods. This area is not the woods. This is the woods. If we go in there, fires will start. Axel, come on. Come on, buddy. We're going to start a fire. Come on. That's a good boy. Come on, buddy. This area is not the woods. Right, buddy? Now, the first time the Tyrant Tim pulled this crap, this area was the woods, and there were pylons all across this trail, so I could not enter in 2023. But this is 2025, so it's not the woods. This area is the woods.
That guy's got a great sense of humor, and it shows the absurdity and the complete lack of science. And again, there was a total lack of science during the pandemic. That was such a key thing. And it was, in fact, later that we learned, for example, in the Justice Center's lawsuit against the no-fly list, that you couldn't get on a plane if you weren't jabbed, that there was no science behind it at all. It was just proof that the government was doing something. and a way to keep people scared, which was quite important too. I think that video by Jeff Evely was brilliant and showed the stupidity of it all. And I was trying to think, how could he or his dog possibly start a fire? In fact, what would be more likely is they might spot a fire that was happening. We have indeed the stupidest government in the world. Now, Marty, you were saying you know this man, Jeff Evely. Tell me how you know him, and is he someone who's going to fight this? He made an excellent mockery of it, but will he fight it?
Well, I mean, Jeff Evely is a veteran. He's a Canadian hero. He also went to Ottawa, and him and his fellow veterans stood guard at the war memorial there in Ottawa, honoring the veterans who died and fought for freedom in this country. And so, and in fact, Jeff Evely was charged and criminally prosecuted for mischief for participating in the Freedom Convoy. So Mr. Evely is a fighter. He's had the support of the Justice Center before in his previous cases. And you know what? The idea that he exposes there, that this is the forest, this is not the forest, it goes to show the absolute absurdity of the interpretation of the Nova Scotia order.